Wow, we've got a nice big crowd tonight, 42 folks.
Nice.
Very exciting. So again, for those of you that are jumping on, coming in here, I'm Sue Magoo Coulter, Education Program Coordinator for the Noyo Center. And I'm so honored to introduce our auspicious guests this evening. Two near and dear women to me. They're my sheroes, two of many sheroes. But in the marine science, detective, sleuthing, stranding network world, they're up there at the top. So I will start by saying that we are so fortunate to have this incredible partnership with California Academy of Sciences, which is just one of my favorite places. And I have this great memory of Sarah and I going down there together for her to bring one of the specimens to Sue. These are our two speakers, and getting pulled into the world, the magical, mystical world of bones. And before that, it was kind of like, yeah, bones, cool, you know. But after that visit, I was hooked. And so Sue Pemberton, one of our guests, representation from California Academy of Sciences, is the stranding coordinator there. And there is a stranding coordinating network that both the Noyo Center and California Academy of Sciences are a part of. And what I appreciate about Sue, and I might screw up some of her intro, but she can enhance it for me, is that I don't believe she went to college to be a bone detective. So I believe that it was after she did her studies that she did some volunteering and got interested that way and just kept on volunteering and learning and training and volunteering and learning. And here it is years later, she has this very important role that she plays at the California Academy of Sciences, not to mention is an amazing teacher of learning about how to sleuth, as she brought that word into my life, sleuth, be a detective, wonder, ponder, and not only learn how to identify like what might be, you know, a little piece of a pelt from an animal with maybe part of a jaw, and from there figure out what it is you're looking at. And what I really appreciate about her is that she really instilled in me to not make any assumptions and not to just stop at what I think it is, but to really rule things out. Look at the teeth, look at the fur, you know, look at the different elements of the bones and the remains of these animals to figure out before you're like, oh, it's a California sea lion, you know. So I really appreciate those skills. And they have a great master class that she and Mo and a couple other women did with the iNaturalist program that I highly recommend checking out. Because I've done a few trainings with Sue and I've been on some of the calls with Sarah, and I was so stoked that I got 10 out of 10 right, but the bonus one I didn't get right, but that's okay. I'll let you all figure it out if you decide to do the course. But so just phenomenal work that Sue does, and California Academy of Sciences, not to mention the collections that they have there. And so I just can't say enough about valuable work that she does and incredible spirit and energy that she puts behind it. And then bringing in Sarah Grimes, near and dear beloved soul sister of the earth, who I love and adore, who I've known for longer than she and I have been involved with the Noyo Center. She's the woman that hooked me in back eight years ago at this point, I think. It's just like, hey, there's this great marine science center. You should come work. Let's teach together. So we used to be the educators together. And then the marine mammal stranding network pulled her into that world. And so she's so dedicated and so incredibly passionate about this work, spends hours and hours combing the beaches, walking them, looking for the remains, gets calls about dead logs, supposedly a marine mammal, gets out on the beach, hikes 3 miles, it's a log, or might be, you know, who knows what else, but is out there dedicated collecting the information. And it goes into an archive of information that is valuable science that before Noyo Center even existed, nobody was doing any of that work on a formal level. And if they were, it would take days for them to come from Humboldt, San Francisco, to come in and do the sleuthing. So we have our very own local sleuther, Sarah Grimes, as well. Sue and Sarah, take it away.
All right. Wow. Thank you, Sue. That was a lovely introduction. And thank you, everybody, for being here tonight. This feels really exciting and fun. Kind of a year in review. Got to look back at pictures and more pictures and count and and be a detective today at the computer, and yesterday a detective on the beach with Sue in the wings, Sue Pemberton in the wings, as we figured out a really cool mystery, which I will share with you all shortly. All right, so I'm going to be talking mostly, and then I'll bring Sue Pemberton in, and she will take it away with a couple of stories that involve both of us and both of our regions. She may chime in at any point, and be a part of the conversation as we roll through these slides of who and what has washed ashore in 2021. So as a designate organization under the California Academy of Sciences, the Noya Center for Marine Science responds to deceased marine mammals along the Southern Mendocino coast. And we Sue talked about this. We're under the umbrella of NOAA Fisheries West Coast Marine Mammal Stranding Network. Marine mammal stranding activities were conducted under authorization by National Marine Fisheries Service through a stranding agreement issued to the California Academy of Sciences. So I am permitted to do this work under permit, and collecting any part of a marine mammal is not legal. And that actually goes for not only marine mammals, but say a mountain lion, which was just picked up off the road and didn't get collected for science, unfortunately. But many of these creatures have stories: migratory birds, mountain lion, bear, marine mammals, obviously. It's best to call and let people know when you come across an animal. So I'm going to move through these. I know most of you are quite familiar with who might wash ashore. Of the otariids, or the eared seals, we have here the stellar sea lion, the California sea lion, the Guadalupe fur seal, and the northern fur seal. Most common would be that California sea lion. And it's shown there is an adult male and then a female and a pup, which we wouldn't necessarily see here all that often this far north. Some of these are more common than others, obviously, and some are a little bit more rare. These are the fur seals. The Guadalupe fur seal with that pointy little nose, long ears, long flippers, really long rear flippers. And here's a picture by Jeff Jacobson of a northern fur seal that really does have that football-shaped head and very long sticky out ears and long flippers. And they are mainly breeding up in the Pribilof Islands. And usually these two species are far offshore, and we don't really get to see them very often unless they're sick or injured, or a pup that might be malnourished and might come ashore. And then, of course, we have our elephant seals, the earless seal, the phocids, the elephant seals, and the harbor seals, both of which I think we are pretty familiar with. The most common would be the harbor seal. And we do see more elephant seals than we used to. They are expanding their range and come ashore to rest occasionally. So I'm just showing you the live pictures of these animals because it's nice to see them alive. And I always go out and try to watch the alive ones and watch the ocean whenever I can, just to rejuvenate my spirit after watching seeing deceased ones. Here we have cetaceans, would be the blue whale, a fin whale, I suppose a sei whale could come in, humpback whale, gray whale, minke whale, sperm whale, killer whale, and then many dolphins and porpoises could wash ashore. Those are the cetaceans. And now I'm going to move into the graphic content of this slideshow. Just be warned that it is graphic. You're going to see the deceased marine mammals, and we're going to kind of dive in deep and talk about them and get into some really good science. And I use this picture because it's one of the way more horrific than seeing the guts of a whale, if you want to know my honest to God truth. More disgusting than seeing maggots on a carcass actually is seeing a mask in the kelp. And I come across masks a lot these days. So pick them up, get rid of them. At the very least, snip that little string so it doesn't entangle an animal. So this year, 2021 so far, We have had 27 California sea lions, 7 harbor seals that are adults, 22 harbor seal pups, and that number is high, not because anything's really wrong, but because we do have harbor seals that have their pups in this area, and I think it's about 50% of young pups of most wild animals are going to survive. So it's, it's pretty normal to see that number, although we do have this coyote predation around the rookery that tends to concentrate quite a few deceased little harbor seal pups. 3 northern elephant seals, 2 Guadalupe fur seals, 1 northern fur seal just last week. I'm happy to say 0 stellar sea lions in my region. That's going to be different for north of here and south of here. As of yesterday, 1 actual humpback whale, 1 gray whale that's got a really cool story, which I wouldn't have known about had it not been for Reef Check. And then 1 minke whale, which is still a bit of a mystery because all I got from that creature was 1 bone. So a total of 65 animals. And then you can see these numbers really represent a very small number of the marine mammals that die along our coastline. Many of them simply sink or are predated or never get reported, or sink and float and sink again, and they're never seen again. And we have a really cool story about that coming up soon. And then in CAS's range, so California Academy of Sciences range, goes from San Mateo County through the Bay Area, up along Sonoma County coast, and then into the Southern Mendocino County range. So right when you get to about Westport and further north, then we're in Humboldt State's area. So we have all these regions, but just in CAS's range, in 2019, 394 animals. In 2020, 312 animals. And in 2021 so far, a total of 362 animals. And of that, the 65 or so, I think I didn't add some animals, but 65 or so in Southern Mendocino County. So those numbers are, changing still as we figure mysteries out. So we'll get into very recent stranding. This happened yesterday. It actually was reported the evening before last, and then it was reported before that in different areas. But I'll just start with this yesterday's finding on Manchester Beach. Let's see, in the evening, someone reported a large white blob at the mouth of the Garcia River, and they were looking at it from the cliff above. And so I reached out to the team, and in this case, it's the Mendonoma team, which is really cool because we're actually including Sonoma County. So Roberta's in Gualala, Joelle is up in Fort Bragg, Tree Mercer's down in the Gualala area, as is Sarah Bogart. And everybody jumped in and met me at 8 o'clock in the morning. And we had this tiny window of time to get out and document this animal, get measurements, collect bits and pieces, and get that story within about an hour's time. So thankfully those folks jumped in, and we were able to collect baleen. Here's a large chunk of baleen, just beautiful baleen. And if you're wondering about baleen, so this animal's upside down. It washed in upside down. The skin and tissue, connective tissue, is so strong that it actually held this animal together through days and days of floating. The skull is upside down, and then the rostrum is coming at us. And you can see this big rack of baleen is in the mouth there, coming forward, and it's shorter in the front and longer in the back. And for science, we will collect these longer plates, and a whole bunch more stories will come out thanks to the scientists who are looking at baleen. We can learn about where this whale was eating and lots of different stuff. Really cool science behind stable isotope studies around baleen from the baleen whales. This animal is not easy to measure because his fluke was at a right angle, His skull was resting upside down on the throat pleats. The flipper was underneath the whale, but we could determine it was a humpback whale. And more on this story in a little bit, because it's quite fascinating how it came to be at the Garcia River yesterday. And here's another one that is absolutely a very cool story. Thank you to our reef check divers who dive every year off of Point Arena and all up and down the coast. But Morgan and Ian went on a dive off of Point Arena they do it yearly. And they dove down in towards the end of June this year. And Morgan was blown away when she saw what she thought maybe was like a sunken tree or something. This is in 50 feet of water. And then at closer look, it revealed to be a whale fall. Actual real whale falls are usually in deeper water and they will stay put for a longer time. This one was in 50 feet of water, so it deteriorated and moved around quite rapidly. But this was the June 28th or June 27th look at this whale. And the ribs and the skull and baleen and pretty much the whole whale. And Ian, I think, said it was about a 40-foot whale. So somewhere between 30 and 40-foot whale. And at the time, we couldn't really tell what type of whale until we went back out there. And Morgan and Ian invited me to go out on the boat on November 18th they went and took a dive and replaced some sensors in one of their study areas, dove down to the exact spot and relocated what was left of this whale fall, which it turns out was just a cervical vertebrae, one vertebrae, I think one mandible, so that lower jawbone, and lo and behold, 3 plates of baleen. And it's this bone-colored baleen and about yay long, which helps us to say that was actually a gray whale. And so that was a really amazing finding. You know, it's easy to document a gray whale and determine species and sex and health and possible human interactions if you've got a whale on the beach. But this one was 50 feet below the water off of Point Arena. So if it wasn't for reef check divers getting out there and collecting these 2 bits, that would have gone unknown to all of us. So super big shout out to Morgan and Ian for discovering that and then reporting it and then helping to go and retrieve bits and pieces. And this, I'm telling you, it was not easy this year. Everything that came very, just with a lot of mystery surrounding it. I was hiking on 10 Mile Beach a couple months ago and came across a single bone on that expansive beach, just one bone. And that's a mystery. I had no idea what bone it was. I decided to leave it. It's a bit broken and I didn't want to collect it because collecting these things, you got to go. It's another level of collection, but I just photographed it and documented it, measured it and left it be. Took those measurements back and asked my intern, Caden Strong, if she wouldn't mind just sketching based on a minke whale bone that we have in-house at the Noyo Center from another animal. And we did the measurements and the shape and were able to determine that that was a minke whale bone and no whale ever washed up. But, you know, like I said, some things sink and they don't ever come ashore. So that was a cool mystery to solve. And we can say a minke whale, but who knows how long that bone has actually been buried in the sand. And that speaks to the movement of sand through currents and wave action and all of that, those things that I learned about from Greg Grantham and oceanography have really presented themselves in interesting ways as I do this work. Caden's this amazing artist and she did these sketches, really beautiful. Thank goodness for interns. And here's another intern, Tomas, who worked with me this summer and was phenomenal. I hope he has joined us from Monterey. He's finishing up his senior year at Cal State Monterey Bay, and he actually got a job at Monterey Bay Aquarium. So shout out to Tomas. He was helping me clean, like we soak these skeletons when we collect them, like a sea lion skull, we'll soak it, and then we've got to put it through a fine strainer. And he found a wee tiny bullet that was associated with one of the California sea lions that we collected. I think this was actually more like a plastic BB, but Sharp Eyes Tomas found it and felt it, and we kept it. So that is called human interaction. So we were able to say, oh, this sea lion was shot. It wasn't necessarily the cause of death for this animal because it was a very tiny BB. Sometimes people will scare the animals off, and they won't necessarily die of that. It could have died of something else. But sleuthing is the process that we go through to kind of determine these things here. So why do the work if we're not going to get the species, which may involve looking at the pattern of the fur, how long the fur is on the flipper. It may involve looking at teeth. It may be looking at the size of the animal. All these different things that Sue was touching bases on about how you sleuth and figure out what species you're looking at, and then what age class you're looking at. Is it a pup? Is it an adult? And then the gender, which can prove to be quite a challenge sometimes to figure out if it's a male or a female. These are marine mammals, and they keep their bits and parts tucked in. Otherwise, they'd be having things flopping about, and that would slow them down for sure. So it's a bit of detective work to figure out a lot of times whether it's a male or a female. We document the location exact, the latitude and longitude of where the stranding took place. We get the date, and then we do search for human interaction, because that's a whole nother level of what happened to the animal. Many of them die from natural causes, but there is a fair bit of human interaction, and Noah really likes to know about that. And it contributes to science, right? If you've got an orca that's entangled in ropes, or a blue whale that's hit by a boat, then we want to document this. We want to know if the animal died by human interaction. And in this gory picture here, we had a tagged marine mammal, California sea lion, about a month ago that showed up on Ward Avenue Beach, and he had a flipper tag, so we could tell that he was an animal that had been through rehab at the Marine Mammal Center. And he looked fine. He was a subadult male California sea lion. He looked fine, but when I dug in a little bit, and this is because Sue Pemberton has taught me so well, there's a wee tiny hole in his back. And I dug a little deeper and found that the rib below the hole was shattered. So this poor animal had been shot in the back. So I collected the skull and the rib. So that would be a human interaction. And sadly, our poor pinniped friends do get shot, which is just tragic and sad, but it does happen. And it's just important to be able to document that. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward, and you get a natural cause. And something that presents fairly easily. This is an adult female harbor seal, and you could see that it was a female by looking at these parts. We can measure it from tail to tip of nose and get the size of the animal and say it's an adult female harbor seal. She looks pretty fat and sassy, but she has got a very large, jaggedy chomp to the abdomen here. And this was right off of Mendocino. Hope there aren't any surfers in the audience. It's good to know, right? So pretty straightforward kind of situation there. We collected this skull, I think, and returned the rest to the ocean. So that's straightforward. Getting a little bit more complicated this is our little northern fur seal. And I got this picture, and Leah Shirley actually collected the data on this one while I was out of town. And we got, oh, this is a female. And Sue Pemberton said, why is it a female? What's that hole right there? And so then I proceeded to say, well, let's look. We've got tissue from the pelvis that goes down to here, kind of a ligament that goes from the pelvic bone. I've opened the animal up. looked on the inside to see if I could see if there were two holes. So you'll have a belly button and then a penis hole if it's a male. And if it's a female, you have a belly button or a navel or umbilicus, and then a vaginal open and an anus opening. So this is sleuthing. This is getting deep. This is where we go and take it to a whole nother level. So I hope none of you are now losing your appetites and have weak stomachs. Forgive me, but this is how you got to figure stuff out when you're doing science. And this is another one where some sleuthing really helped to find this human interaction, which was a big slug. So this guy had been shot. And this was kind of interesting. I looked at this harbor seal, adult male, and it kind of looked like he'd been entangled, which could be a reason why he deteriorated and then died. There was no rope on him, but there was these weird scars, and he was really scarred up. So we collected the skull, and this is what it looks like after soaking in warm water and then brightening for a little bit, and comes out beautifully. Here are all the teeth and a nice skull. And then something caught my eye and looking through into this sinus area from the side. And upon closer look, I don't know if you can see that, but that's a stingray barb that went through the nasal there, through the sinus cavity, and didn't quite go into the brain, but ouch, this poor guy was in, I don't know, again, I don't know if that's why he died. So he's still kind of a mystery, but not a happy animal. I could at least say that. That's got to be painful. So this is the skull, the jaw bones, the teeth, and then this is the baculum or penis bone of an adult male harbor seal. So kind of, I love this part. I love pulling it out of the soak and looking at what we've got. It's like it's when the real fun begins. This is that tagged animal and the importance of tags, which I'll let Sue Pemberton get into more, but this was the animal that was shot in the back. And this told us that he had been rescued and gone through rehab at the Marine Mammal Center and then released, and then sadly was shot in the back later. There's the little hole in the staining. And then this little critter, this is a little California sea lion. He looks fat and sassy. He's been chomped by a shark, a couple little sharks that chomped him. But that wasn't the cause of death. These were all healed up and fine. And then we actually decided to collect this specimen so that maybe we can work with interns to put the skeleton together of a young California sea lion. And upon cleaning him up, we found these weird osteo issues in his vertebrae. They looked like all bubbled up and weird. So I'm not sure what that is. We're going to have to look and get someone who knows more about bone issues. Maybe it's cancer, bone cancer. I don't know, but interesting mystery. And then this is really getting to the fun part of our talk tonight is the theme we came up with, a drift. Things move up and down the coast. So this animal was reported on Portuguese Beach in Mendocino. It's a female harbor seal. It had this weird sloughing skin on the lower abdomen there. And I happened to get some good pictures of that. And then like a couple weeks later, or maybe 10 days later, I got a report of an animal. Sue Pemberton called me and said, oh, my beach watch people found a female harbor seal. Could you go look at it? And I went and looked at it. And this was familiar to me right here. And I had tied green twine around the flipper so that helps to kind of keep track of our animals. We don't want to put plastic on them or anything, but so the green twine had come off of her flipper. This pink twine is from Beach Watch, who surveys the Manchester beach in South. But this animal, the same length and the timing and the currents and whatnot, told the story that this animal had gone 24 miles south from Mendocino down and stranded on Manchester Beach. So that's kind of a cool thing, talking about currents and how things move up and down the coast. So adrift, here we have this incredible ocean movement a year ago, January, and king tides. And reckoning back to a story like last January, there was this massive surf event that actually unearthed a ship at Casper Beach. And this ship, side of the ship has got wooden pegs. And it's kind of this I called the maritime archivists from the state parks, and they came down and saw that this was a very old ship that had actually been unearthed by the wave action that took and moved that sand off to another place. And we'd had a whale that stranded on Manchester Beach last year that was entangled. So in 2020 up here, and this surf event moved part of him up about a mile in north and part of him south, and then up about a mile up the Garcia River. So the pieces of this whale ended up way up the Garcia River, a mile from where it was last seen in the lagoon there. And this was reported in January, even though this was actually a 2020 animal. It was dispersed, so to speak. So that was a humpback whale. And here's sort of its map. So original stranding here on Manchester Beach, and then it came up further north and came up the Garcia River. Here it is when it first stranded, and it first stranded with evidence of possible entanglement. It was missing its fluke, and then it came up further north, and then a part of it actually came up with ropes and whatnot, but they were not attached to the whale. So it came in as flotsam and jetsam in a different place. That was kind of last year's interesting story, that a 2020 whale that then pieces of it came up on Manchester Beach in 2021. And the same kind of thing just happened earlier, a month or two ago, where it was pushing animals up creeks. This one came up in the Anchor Bay campground, almost, I don't know, way up the creek. And the camp host was pretty upset. And they're like, could you please come and get this thing? I was like, I don't get things. Y'all are going to have to deal with that. And I think they pushed him off back out to sea, but I was able to collect the level A data on that animal. And now this is what was yesterday's story, but it also goes back a bit. And my part of the story is just really began on the 5th of December when somebody said they saw a white blobby thing with throat pleats floating about a mile or two northwest of Point Arena. So I reported that, and Sue reported that to Noah. And then December 6th in the evening, we got that report that a white blobby thing had washed in. I'm going to let Sue Pemberton jump in here to fill in the rest of this story.
This was an epic deep sleuthing, and I have to give high praise to Sarah for really keeping a very acute sleuthing eye on every part of this carcass. You can see the difference between the floating whale up in the upper left-hand corner and then what was presented a few weeks later. It's really difficult, but as I always tell people, if you look close enough, the story is there. So on November 18th, the Coast Guard in Bodega reported a fresh dead cetacean floating off of Muscle Point, just north of Bodega Bay. It was still in its natural position, stomach down, not bloated or anything. And it was not there the next day. We were not able to really identify it without going through. They were kind enough to take a video. So we watched the video. It was at night with a big light on it. So it was really hard to tell what it was, but we were able to actually, Ryan Berger at the Marine Mammal Center really kind of went over the video with a fine-tooth comb and was able to pull out some of the identifying parts of this whale. So 2 days later, what is up in the upper left-hand corner is what presented in the Stump Beach Cove up in the Fort Ross area. It was in an area that was inaccessible, so we were not able to get any skin or anything, and it kind of poked around that area for a couple of days. Then we didn't really see it again, so we documented it and submitted the paperwork based on the photos. And then this white blob showed up, and oftentimes they can be completely different whales. And in this case, Sarah took some photos. Sarah Bogard took some photos of this little strip of barnacles on within the throat pleats that match the strip of barnacles in the whale in the upper left. I pored over those all day today, just because we want to make sure. We don't want to duplicate data. This is data that we're collecting. So I flipped images and looked at the pleats and the pattern in the pleats and things like that. And later in the afternoon, I was able to share with Sarah that I thought it was the same animal. So it actually ended up drifting 56 miles from its original sighting and heading north, but that's not even the winner. We have another one we'll talk about later that's a much bigger winner. But this, I can't say how much I appreciate the effort that Team Mendocino went through to really document this animal and let its full story be told. That's really what we're here for. You know, we do love the science, but I feel like even in death, these animals have stories to tell, and we want to be those storytellers. So thank you, Sarah, and everybody from Team Mendocino for putting out such a stellar effort, because this was an important story to tell.
Oh, so good. Yeah, we have such a good teacher in getting down into the nitty-gritty details, because the sad news would have been that we had 3 dead humpbacks like they just had in South Africa. But the good news was that we actually only had 1 dead humpback whale, it turns out. In the end of the story there, it was all the same whale, which that's kind of good news. I'll take good news where I can get it, for sure. Yeah. So here's the other really cool story that I'll let Sue, the great storyteller, unpack for you a little bit.
This was the winner of the Great Drift contest for this year. And I was a little bit surprised to see this, because I'm not surprised to see a tagged animal. We do see tagged animals, and that's actually one of the valuable and really scientifically important reasons why researchers and rehabilitators tag animals, for this very reason, and for resites on live animals as well, although these tags are very difficult to read from far away. But there are people who do it in places where pinnipeds congregate. So we had received this report about a tagged sea lion in Colmer Gulch. So I sent the lower Team Mendocino sea ranch folks out, and they documented it, and come to find out it was a former Marine Mammal Center patient. It was from the 2018 pup cohort and was a patient in 2019 at the Marine Mammal Center, and was released Point Reyes and had not been seen since then. So I went to put this in the Stranding database, and I wanted to get the California sea lion number from the level A data sheet that the Marine Mammal Center submitted from when he was in rehab. So I popped the tag number in the database, and I came up with 3 entries, and I thought, this is bizarre. So I clicked on the Moss Landing Marine Lab entry, and it turns out on the 23rd of August of this year in Big Sur, this animal was reported. Not unusual, but who knows, not everything we see is tagged, but the way the ocean is and the movement and the currents and stuff, doesn't surprise me that things move around, but this one kind of blew my mind. So going through the initial reports that the marine mammals sent us in regards, because they're the ones who let us know about this one at Colmer Gulch, because somebody called them. You could see that it was a short 6 days that this had traveled 178 miles in drift, unless he put his thumb out on Highway 1 and caught a ride, which even though they have a bone that's kind of like our thumb, it's probably not true. But that was just insane to me. And it reminded me and underscored, number one, our need when Sarah talks about how we mark carcasses so that we're not duplicating. You know, you'll see either white string or green twine for our operations, and that's so you know, I expect things to drift around on a beach or you know, from a beach adjacent to it, but never this far. This is crazy. So so yeah, so when you see things like that, just know that we were there. Please don't remove anything like that. Don't let anybody remove stuff like that. And like I said before, it really underscores the value of having these tagged and branded animals. It gives us life history. It allows us to close chapters for places like the Marine Mammal Center. You know, we don't get a lot of information about what happens to animals after they leave rehabilitation. So this is a way to close out a story. And we did let the Marine Mammal Center know that this animal was found dead, and so that they can add that as an addendum to its record when it was in care with them.
Crazy. I just drove that distance. I went down to visit Maddie in Monterey, and that was a long ass drive from Monterey to Mendocino. And though this animal didn't come all the way up here, it did most of that trip at post-mortem on the currents, on the waves, and somehow managed to restrand up here from Big Sur in Monterey County all the way up to Sonoma County. And so I thought I had included a map to show you, but look at a map, take it in, check it out. That looks like it. The picture is really stretched. Sorry, Sue. What the heck is this? I'm glad it didn't happen in my backyard, because I would not have known what this animal is. This happened in Sue's backyard.
This isn't too far off from what they really look like, because it might not surprise you that this cetacean was reported to Marco Cahiro with California Department of Fish and Wildlife as a shark. It does kind of look sharky, but this is actually a pygmy sperm whale. It's a Kogia breviceps. They have a really tiny, super underslung jaw, and I don't have any pictures with these really long teeth, and they kind of resemble sperm whales. So there's the classic large sperm whale, the physeters, and then there's a pygmy sperm whale. And then there's one that's even smaller, a dwarf sperm whale, a Kogia sima, that are more further south, like in South America, Mexico, and things like that. But this turned up, this one didn't have such an epic story of drift, but it did drift. It went from one beach to another. Showed up on Pomponio State Beach, right by where I live. One evening, was reported to the Marine Mammal Center, rolling in the surf. It was undetermined whether it was still alive or not, but I went out the next morning. It was no longer there. I ran into a lifeguard who said, I just saw it get pulled out in a giant rip. So I went looking, found some fossils of something else up on the bluff, and just kind of spent my day waiting for this to turn back up. And a little bit later on in the day, I made contact with the same lifeguard who was actually pulling it out of the surf zone for us. Verizon had gone down, so I wasn't able to communicate with anybody about this, and so I had to do it the good old-fashioned way of just by walking the beach and looking for stuff. And so we pulled it up and out of the surf, and then the next day, a couple of folks from the Marine Mammal Center and I went down and did a full necropsy on the beach with her. some of the things that were really intriguing with her. Number one, she was an adult female. She was 310 centimeters. So she was 3 meters, like 11 feet long, somewhere along that. A few hundred pounds. But one of the things, it was kind of gross, but really intriguing at the same time, was that she had all of these pockets in her muscle that had either little parasites or parasite egg sacs. And then when I went to harvest her skull, we found a really big pocket of worms in the back. It's really gross, but it's really intriguing to me. And then her whole reproductive system was removed in a block. So they just cut it out and took it up to the Marine Mammal Center for the pathologist to look at a little bit closer in their lab. And she had a little tiny, I think a 12 millimeter fetus in one of the horns of her uterus. So it's kind of a double hit in the sense that, you know, these were two breeding females that, well, I don't know if the little one was a female or not, but these were two animals that were taken out in one shot. The cause of death was not determined. Histology is still kind of pending. We did find broken ribs, and we collected a flipper and the scapula. And as my bone prepper down here in San Francisco was working on it, she sent me a text and said the scapula was broken. So we didn't find any associated trauma. So when we find broken bones, that's not the end of that story. There's a little bit of a deeper dive, and you want to find associated bruising or hemorrhaging in those areas. So that could be, you know, gelatinous bloody tissue, or just broken bones with blood staining and things like that in it. And we didn't find any of that. So we're kind of defaulting to that damage as being done post-mortem. And that would happen with a floating dead whale. It's possible that they just got hit by a small craft or hit some rocks or something like that. But she had 3 or 4 broken ribs and a broken shoulder blade. But she's magnificent. We collected her skull for archival at the at California Academy of Sciences, and she's currently being processed as we speak. And she will join our research collection and tell her story. We don't see a lot of Kojias up here, so she will live on longer than I'll be here to tell her story, just by being where she was when she was, and having the scientific workup that she had.
Wow, that is so cool. So you know, studying these animals that live in the ocean is a lot of work, as those that study live marine mammals know. So this, you know, finding and learning from something that washes up on shore is just, you know, it's just so important. And that Sue's commitment to finding more to that story is just awesome. Yeah, so who else? It was what washed ashore and what washed out and what washed ashore again. And then we've kind of been over what washed ashore here along the Mendocino coast this year, in Southern Mendocino and beyond. And who else is kind of interesting. We had one of our beach survey team report a black bear floating in the Noya River. And this is when she gets a little bit like, that's mission creep, but you know, the bear also had a story. And I did in fact find, once we got them all flensed, because Sue and Mo Flannery oversees mammalogy and ornithology. So it's not unheard of for me to collect land mammals for Mo. And in the case of the bear, he was in such great shape that we collected the whole skeleton for California Academy of Sciences. And it turned out, you know, our suspicion was a through and through bullet to the hind limb. And then as Richard Millis, our collections manager up here, and I were going through what was left after the soak, now he's just bones. We did find a pretty good sized bullet that was in his exoskeleton. And that happens, but you know, the exciting part is to be able to contribute the tooth and the age, and very little is known about our black bear population. So again, contributing to science. Other things that wash ashore, such as a ray or a shark. There are scientists who are absolutely interested in those carcasses, so feel free to report those animals as well. And then just a reminder, we did have a sea turtle, and this year there were a number of them, a couple in Mendocino County, some to the north. This is in Olive Ridley, and one stranded alive and was taken to the Marine Mammal Center. But if you are out there and find a sea turtle, call the Marine Mammal Center immediately, live or dead, because a lot can be learned as well about those animals. Seems odd to see a sea turtle up here, but it can happen. And what else? You know, I'm always fascinated by the stuff I find out there. I love removing possible entanglements. So many toys. For years, I've been fascinated with this little army man that I found out in the sand. And then yesterday I found his tank. And this is a cartilaginous fish's skull or a ray or something like that. I'm not so good with those things. They're cartilaginous, so they're not bones, but they're really, really cool. And then I have no idea what Yamashit is, but there's lots of interesting characters and toys and ropes and things, that a spoon, all sorts of stuff washes in. And I will be a detective walking the beaches till the day I die, because it's fascinating what the ocean turns up. And this is kind of a cool thing for anybody that happens to be feeling queasy. This is a tag. He's got like a hair dye tag, or not a tag. It's just a brand. It's not even a brand. All right. He's been painted with hair dye by the folks up at Humboldt State, with the group of elephant seals, northern elephant seals, that have decided to make Shelter Cove their home. And the students there, the grad students there, put this KM16, and he showed up on Noyo Beach. And so I got a good picture, checked him out. He was gorgeous. He spent the evening up here on Noyo Beach, and I reported him to the folks up at Humboldt, and they were like, that he had left 2 days prior, and they said, we were wondering where that bull went. And he rested for the night and then was on his way. Happily did not come up as a dead thing. Just a nice, beautiful bull resting on our beach for the evening. Quite a sight to see. They're 13 feet long, and he was exquisitely handsome. If you can get past the nose and look at those eyes, they really are a thing of beauty, according to me. I just want to say thanks to my beach survey team for surveying the Southern Mendocino County beaches every 2 weeks, and for reporting what they find and washed ashore. Their volunteer hours equal over 300 hours now. We've been doing this for now 6 months. We started in June. They have reported an absolute ton of kelp. They have removed trash, probably over 300 pounds of trash. They've reported 6 deceased marine mammals while on survey, so that's a really good thing. To have this effort-based survey happening on our coast is really exciting. So huge thanks to them. They've also reported a bear, 2 deer, and a quote-unquote raccoon that actually turned out to be a Guadalupe fur seal. And then they've also reported 3 live marine mammals. So that's cool. And thanks to the photographers that were in contributing to this presentation. Really, really love the work of the photographers. And it is now that time of the evening where we get to stop screen sharing and have a conversation. It's been probably getting towards an hour, but I would absolutely love it if you want to stay here and ask questions. I see that there's quite a number of things in the chat.
I did want to mention one thing that we didn't talk about here, and that's the 2 open unusual mortality events that were currently being investigated. UMEs are more intensified investigations for marine mammals. and they have to meet certain criteria in order for a UME to be opened. Back in 2015, Guadalupe fur seals had a higher stranding rate, so they had a UME open, and I was part of the UME committee. I'm in charge of keeping track of every stranding in California. And, secondarily, I begged every carcass off of everybody from Washington to San Diego. So we were able to expand our Guadalupe collection from 27 to well over 350 now. But I'm happy to say that with all the investigation and everything that we've done, we found that there wasn't much abnormal that was going on with them. There was no catastrophic disease or anything. It was just their numbers are increasing and they're actually starting to return to their historic range. So I'm happy to say that we voted, the working group voted to close the Guadalupe fur seal UME. And then there's still an open gray whale UME. This past year, there were 19 in California. 17 of those were in Northern California. And that investigation is ongoing. As you know, the southward migration is beginning. So we're going to see what they look like as they pass through California and when they arrive in Mexico. And then when they turn back around and head back north and see, if we get a higher stranding numbers in the spring. And then if that one seems like it's returning to normal, they'll probably close that one as well. But they want to give it one more migration season. But that's it. We had 48 Guadalupe fur seals in the state of California this year that had that were live and dead.
Well, and we only had, from up here, we only had 2, which last year, I think 12 or something in the year before, we had 12 of the deceased and a couple live rescues. And our young listener, Jabril, is asking why humans shoot these animals. And it's a heartbreaking thing to witness, and a very sad situation. But people shoot things like shooting the bear, maybe because he got into the chicken coop too many times, or knocked over the apple trees. It's definitely not the answer. And why do people shoot sea lions? I don't know. I don't know. I wish I had an answer. I think that fisher people do get frustrated sometimes and will try to scare the sea lions away. But it costs a lot to maintain a salmon fishing boat, and it costs a lot to get your license, and you want to get out there and catch salmon. And sea lions are very smart. They sometimes get fed the chum or the waste from the fish. And so the sea lions will follow the fishing boats, ruining a fisher person's day of fishing. So there might be an answer there. But oftentimes we're seeing carcasses where it looks like somebody's just doing target practice for no reason. But it's a tough one, and I don't know the answer, Jabril. I'm sorry. But at least we're reporting these animals and getting the word out, and having people keep, the sea lions keep a great balance out there. So if we get rid of the sea lions, if they get their population in trouble, then the fishing population will be in trouble because all the things that you're learning, Jabril. And then when stingray loses its barb this way in a harbor seal, what happens to the stingray? Does the stingray survive? I have no idea. I know nothing about stingrays. Maybe somebody else can answer that.
That was answered actually by Thomas.
Oh, no. Oh, nice. Thanks, Tomas. Great.
Sarah, I have a question. I'm Karen Wilkinson. I'm the one who talked to you a little bit about going up the Garcia River a mile to find that whale. I am so delighted that you followed up. And I know you sent me an email message about it, but it was great to see pictures tonight. I wondered if that seemed very far for a whale to have traveled. Is that normal for rivers?
I don't think it is normal. It's an oceanographic phenomenon with a king tide and a huge high surf event like we had in January, that would happen. Because I measured it, it was a mile up there, and very bizarre, but that is an estuary where, you know, the waves do go up. And if you go out there at a high tide and a big surf, you can really see how that could happen. It's very flat, like I said. But yeah, that's the only way that whale could have gotten there. And it was probably only a few days during the year that could actually happen like that.
I was doing an episode. Oh, go ahead, Karen.
I was just curious with the find today. Where was it? You said Garcia River too, right? Or
exactly. Yeah, it was right at the mouth.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right at the mouth of the Garcia, and it could, if we get a big storm, it could do the same thing.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, well, thank you. Your enthusiasm and your dedication is wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Thanks.
I was doing an episode of a forum with KQED, and somebody called in and said, I was down in Pescadero and I saw some whale tail flukes about a mile up the creek. And I was like, yeah, right. You know, you get all kinds of people calling into radio shows and stuff. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I went down there. Lo and behold, they were just the tail flukes. There wasn't any skin left. I photographed it, and we were unable to get a species on it, but passing photos around, it was probably a young blue whale or a fin whale because of the shape of the tail flukes. So yeah, all it takes is a creek or river mouth opening and a good surge, and off they go to the races. It's going to confuse some, you know, paleontologists in 150 years, but you know.
Wow. I was wondering if it was the fluke to that flukeless humpback, but it was not a humpback fluke.
No, this was in 2015.
Okay. Oh, goodness.
Hi,
Yeah.
Sarah. This is Elise.
Hi.
Repeat the name of the group that the biweekly beach surveying and how that works, or how I could find out more about it.
That can be come into the Noyo Center, and we've got information about our effort-based survey that we just launched. And you can pick a beach, and we can get you hooked up probably at the beginning of the next of 2022 will be when I can actually wrap my brain around bringing on more surveyors, but that would be great. The more the merrier. I think Navarro Beach is open to be shared with another surveyor, so that would be super helpful. That'd be great. Yeah, get in contact with me, or even go to the Noyo Center website and sign up as a volunteer, and we can work you in that way. That's awesome.
Please go to the Cal Academy website, calacademy.org, and there are a slew of modules that we created for Beach Watch, but we're now sharing them with the general public that break down identification of marine mammals by and data collection, which may or may not excite you. And then there are also a series of 3 master classes, one of which is Sleuthing with Me, on YouTube, but you can also access those through the Cal Academy website. So if you just go to calacademy.org and just type in marine mammals, and it'll take you to that page. I highly encourage you to dive into some of this stuff, because then you can be a big dead marine mammal nerd like the rest of us.
Well, thank you, Noyo Center. Thank you, Sheila Siemens, for believing in this work and doing the work behind the scenes to make this happen. Thank you, Maureen Flannery at Cal Academy. Thank you, Sue, for joining. And thank you, dear sweet audience and supporters. Thanks, everybody.